rare and balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Well, it looks like Bam, as she apparently went to some appointment or whatever with a Trump sweatshirt on or whatever, something along those lines. Anyway, she was talking about doing it yesterday in the chat, and she went ahead and wore it, and apparently she got a compliment and a lot of smiles, along with the fact that her doctor started laughing. I think that's going to happen a lot, folks. I think that things are going to start turning around. People are going to be starting to actually feel as though they can, start to express themselves the way they've really wanted to literally for the last 4 years, to be honest with you. And 3 Chevy apparently was wearing his American Perspective logoed t-shirt, and he hasn't gotten beat up by the cat yet. So I guess it's a good thing. Yeah. Anyway. Oh, I love my chatters. I love my Whiskey Warrior P1s. You guys are just great. All right. Oh, shoot. I just realized that I did not change out the, who was doing the pledge. So hold on just a second. We've got a new one for tonight. This one is, shall we say, a, oldie, but a goodie. Oldie but a goodie. So let's go ahead and get things kicked off. Please, if you are of mine, please stand. Remove your hat if you're wearing one like me. And place your hand over your heart. And follow along with our special guest. We'll see if you guys know who this person is on the backside. Special guest reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And, of course, I am going to thank 3 Chevy for that submission. No, it is not 3 Chevy talking in the pledge. Oh, yeah, see, I'm telling you, my Whiskey Warrior P1s, they're all over it. All over it. From Amy was the first one that came in, and then Bonnie and USA Abby Girl right behind. So there we go in terms of the order. If we go by the order that it comes into me, I don't know how long it took you guys to type that, but there you go. Anyway, yes, that was John Wayne, also known as the Duke, reciting the Pledge of Allegiance for us. And that, like I said, is thanks to 3 Chevy for submitting that one. If you would like to hear your version of the Pledge of Allegiance played here on the program, all you need to do is record yourself performing the pledge in your style, whether that's a audio or video file, doesn't really matter. I'll strip out the audio, and take it and attach it to an email is the most preferred method. Once you attach it to that email, send it off to fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. That's fans, F-A-N-S, at AmericanPerspective.online. And I will get you put into the rotation for that. For tonight's headline promo, we are going to be talking about True Grit Roots Network. TGRN.net is our home on the interwebs, where you can go to listen to the wonderful sounds that we are putting out there. TGRN Blues is our signature channel right now. And in January of 2025, we are going to swap over a little bit. There's still going to be blues, but there's also going to be rock mixed in with that. And it will be headlined by a blues rock icon that has not been announced yet, but it is coming soon, I promise. That's in January of 2025. But until then, let me tell you about one of our spectacular shows that we do have. Let's talk about Cruisin' on the Blues Highway. Cruisin' on the Blues Highway is hosted by Pat Mighty Quinn as the on-air personality. And let me just tell you a little bit of what he says about this show. He says, I have always been a fan of the blues and blues rock, going back to the late 60s. My two older sisters introduced me to several artists and bands like Muddy Waters and Buddy Guy, the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin, Eric Clapton, and then in the 1970s, I discovered so much more. I learned a lot from the blues greats back then. You'll hear a lot of guitar-driven artists on my show, which a number of listeners have told me how much they appreciate that I feature these types of artists they can't hear or find on other stations. The blues is here to stay, I guarantee that. Cruisin' on the Blues Highway is exclusively at TGRN, True Grit Roots Network. It airs 6 p.m. Central Time with an encore presentation tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Time. So you can listen to the encore presentation tomorrow of his Thursday night show. Cruisin' on the Blues Highway exclusively at TGRN. That's tgrn.net, where you can listen direct through your browser. You can download our app, or you can find us in one of the following three other applications. Live 365, Odyssey, that's AUDACY, and, of course, the iHeartRadio app. You can find us in their catalog of digital radio stations. TGRN.net, based out of Austin, Texas. All right. So, first of all, if there's any indication as to the difference in the country today versus what it was prior to the election, I can't think of one other than showing this particular article in Red State. This is, to me, this is a positive sign, a forward-looking sign for it. And, yeah, I think you guys are going to love it. I was pleasantly surprised myself when it came up, but here we go. In Red State, the first ever nativity in U.S. history is being displayed at the Capitol right now. Folks, we are a Judeo-Christian values and principles-based nation. We were founded upon those values and principles. And I know a lot of people think that, you know, religion and government are supposed to be completely separated from one another. But the fact of the matter is that when you look back into history, as I've told you on this program multiple times, okay, the founding fathers all believed in a creator. The founding fathers all believed in God's law being superseding man's law and influencing man's law. And so this is an incredible step forward for this country. I'm just telling you that right now. For the first time in history, United States history, a native scene is on display. A nativity scene, is on display at Capitol Hill. Tuesday afternoon, the Christmas carols and nativity display was held on the southeastern steps of the U.S. Capitol on the House of Representatives side. The event included prayer, Christmas cards, and a scripture reading about the birth of Jesus. According to a newsletter from the Christian Defense Coalition, the display comes after Reverend Patrick Mahoney director of the Christian Defense Coalition, won a federal court case in May that ruled that the steps of the U.S. Capitol building are a public forum. Thus, peaceful demonstrations can take place on the steps of the building. Now, Reverend Patrick Mahoney is a rabble-rouser, but in a good way. Okay? He has been fighting for religious liberty in America and around the world for decades. In 2011, 13 years ago, Mahoney started waging this battle against the federal government when he let it be known that he would pray and read scripture in front of the Capitol Christmas tree and was told that he would be arrested. So his attorney met with police officials on Tuesday and explained to them his plans to hold a small nativity display. Pray for peace, justice, religious freedom, and political leaders. Read the Christmas story from the Bible and sing Christmas carols at the Capitol tree on Thursday. Police responded to that by informing Mahoney that he could be arrested for his Christmas displays on the west lawn of the U.S. Capitol building. They told him that some of his activities may be prohibited or constitute an illegal demonstration, according to a press release. But it was Mahoney's 2022 lawsuit in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia that finally forged a path. Mahoney filed it after he was again denied a permit to peacefully demonstrate at the U.S. Capitol, this time on Good Friday. In May of 2024, the court finally ruled in his favor, but despite the federal government's resistance to the inclusion of a nativity or a traditional religious observance at the Capitol, this is not legal precedent. The U.S. Capitol victory follows a long line of victories to maintain or place nativity scenes on for display on government and other public property. They covered the famous case of 1984 in Chicago, Illinois, where the government officials tried to remove the resurrected nativity on Chicago's Daily Plaza. They lost that battle, and the display, which is now in its 40th year, continues to this day. The ACLU and other anti-religion groups have tried to have nativity scenes in various cities and states removed or restricted, claiming separation of church and state. Yeah, we know about that. I've told you about that. There is no separation of church and state. There is a one-way mirror that is preventing, I should say, the governor or the government from blocking religious freedom of expression. Yeah, it's not a wall. It's a one-way mirror. So, yeah, so there you go. But anyway, this is a path forward. This is a fantastic path forward. It is, to me, again, it is a sign of good things to come. So there you go. Well, despite that sign, and despite the fact that we have just a little under 40 days till the changeover from the most horrendous presidential administration in modern history, for sure, coming in with a much better administration coming in soon, the parting shots of the Bidens and the Biden administration, well, they're just now starting to come out. And I got to tell you, they've got, about a month. We're taking off some time, hopefully, for Christmas and New Year's, but they have about a month to get some parting shots in. So they decided to start, believe it or not, with the whole pardon thing, and I'll get to those in just a minute. But the thing about it is, though, is that for the obvious parting shot here in hot air, the Biden admin is rushing. They are trying to Oh, wait. Okay, hold on. Mark just asked this question. So before I get to this, Mark over on Facebook says, what does one-way mirror, not a wall mean? I can't believe. Oh, anyway, here's the thing. The left and a lot of anti-religious folks utilize Thomas Jefferson's words that he stated in a letter to a religious group in an attempt to describe or explain the fact that that religious group cannot be prevented from practicing their religion in their way. And that was the tone of the letter. But unfortunately, what Thomas Jefferson used as exact words was there is a wall of separation between church and state. Now, keep in mind, they didn't have one-way mirrors invented back then. So the fact of the matter is that the way that it actually works, if you read the First Amendment, the way that it actually works is that Congress itself cannot make laws preventing the practice of religion, nor can Congress pass a law mandating a government-sponsored or state-sponsored religion. And so when you look at it in that context, what it essentially means, or what I mean by more of a one-way mirror rather than a wall, basically means that religion itself, which is God's law, natural law, whatever you want to call it, religion itself can influence and should influence man's law. But man's law, because God's law supersedes man's law cannot interfere with God's law. And that's the principles that were put forth in the Constitution in the way that the First Amendment was phrased. And it is also supported by all of the actions henceforth in terms of things like when they would meet for congressional meetings, they practice a prayer to open up the meeting, that they would pray prior to public meetings and those types of activities long time prior to this idea, this secular, fully secular idea of the fact that government is God and that it needs to be separated from God. But anyway, hopefully that makes some sense to you, Mark. All right, let's move back into this piece in hot air. So the Biden admin is apparently rushing to auction off the border wall materials in a last-ditch effort to keep Donald Trump from building that border wall. So from that particular sense, I mean, I don't. They're just schmucks. They're schmucks, is what they are. And what's happening right now is that they are currently hauling off, and you can see this in this video. They are hauling off unused border wall materials. They're being taken from the Arizona border, and they're running it northward into a government auction site where bidding on these materials is starting off at like $5. A Border Patrol agent estimates that it is a half a mile worth of wall that is being transported every single day. So that's a lot of border wall. And so what they're doing is the Biden administration is basically trying to sell off these materials so that Donald Trump has to repurchase them, and of course wasting money, ideally, but repurchase them and maybe encounter construction slowdowns and all kinds of things of that nature. And so, yeah, Biden is trying to he's trying to do everything he can to stop the federal government or the incoming administration from doing what it's saying that it should want, basically wanting it to do. Now, the agent that got the video basically said they are taking it from from 3 stations: Nogales, Tucson, and 3 Points. And the goal, of course, is to move it all off of the border before Christmas. So Trump made it clear during his campaign that he intends to finish the construction of the border wall, making use of the materials that have essentially remained untouched at the border since Joe Biden took office in 2021. But if the material brought to the border during his first term is sold off, it will significantly delay any progress on one of Trump's flagship campaign promises at the border. Now, that being said, there is a senator, according to the Daily Wire, you can see it here, there's a senator that is calling on the Pentagon to actually halt the sale of the border wall. He's basically saying that the government is only recouping a 0.02% of the taxpayer cost. This senator is a Republican Senator Eric Schmidt, and he's demanding that the Biden administration's Pentagon cease the sale of the border wall materials being offloaded, saying that the outgoing administration is sabotaging the effort to secure the border while only recouping 0.02% of the taxpayer money that was used to buy the material initially. So, yeah. Anyway, Schmidt wrote a letter and said, "I am writing to demand that you immediately cease the auctioning off of border wall materials." He said, "Senate Republicans, including the incoming chairman, as well as my colleagues on the Senate Armed Services, have raised the absurdity of selling border wall materials through letters, nomination hearings, and through the National Defense Authorization Act legislative process." Schmidt's analysis of the already completed sales this month found that the administration is offloading the wall materials for far less than the market value of the material alone. He pointed out a representative sale on December 11th of 2024 concluded with 4 sections of border wall accounting for almost 16,000 pounds worth of steel, selling for only $105. He said, if purely sold for scrap metal at the average cost of $695 per metric ton, the value of that particular lot, 4 sections, is actually worth $5,219. According to his math, the government is only recouping just 0.02% of the taxpayer money that was used to initially secure the material during Trump's first term. So the senator also added to his letter here, he's like, these border wall materials will cost tens of thousands of taxpayer dollars to replace and will be critical to stem the record flow of millions of illegal immigrants who were welcomed across our border during the Biden administration. So, he just, the pettiness, honestly, the pettiness of this Biden administration officials. Because let's be honest, this isn't Biden doing this. This is some underling somewhere who, has basically said, well, we got kicked out, so F you. Yeah. That's essentially what they're doing. Anyway, I'm just, what a mess. What a mess. So well, that's fine. What do I need to do here? Okay. So, anyway, as I was kind of got distracted there because I'm trying to work on something that'll hopefully change some things. But anyway, all right, let me get back to the show. So you remember I told you about, sorry, had to take a drink there for those on the audio portion of the program. You remember that I told you about the 1,500 sentences that Biden commuted and the 39 pardons that he handed out. Well, we've now had time, some people, I should say, have now had time to analyze the 1,500 commutations that Biden has done. And, well, surprise, surprise, Joe Biden has decided to commute the sentences on some, well, let's just say pretty heinous criminals. Yeah. He has, and it's not just because of they were good in prison. Here in the Federalist, Biden has quietly commuted the sentences of some Chinese spies. Well, I guess Xi Jinping called him up and said, hey, your last act, you better get some of my spies back here. Yeah. So President Joe Biden announced on Thursday granting 39 pardons and 1,499 commutations in what his administration called the single largest day grant of clemency in modern history. But it's not the set of commutations that have caught the attention of concerned citizens. It's that those were quietly given weeks ago to Chinese spies. Ex-user Nick Sorter posted that Joe Biden just pardoned multiple Chinese spies and an individual convicted of possessing child pornography. Wait, what? Yeah. The thing is, Joe didn't just commute the sentences for these criminals. He did it quietly only days before Thanksgiving. While most Americans were finalizing their menus and getting into the holiday spirit, Biden commuted the sentence of Yangjun Zhu on November 22nd. Zhu was convicted in 2022 for conspiracy to commit economic espionage, conspiracy to commit trade secret theft, attempted economic espionage by theft or fraud, and attempted theft of trade secrets by taking or deception. But according to Joe Biden's pardon, it is in the national interest that the term of imprisonment related to the aforesaid conviction not be served in its entirety. Wait, what? That's right. Zhu was ordered to leave the United States and never return or commit any other crimes against the United States, according to the pardon. Similarly, another spy, Ji Shaogun, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing these names correctly. I'm just going by whatever's written in front of me. But anyway, was convicted of conspiracy to defraud the United States, impersonating agents of foreign governments, statements or entries generally. Now, G arrived in the United States in 2013 on an F-1 visa before later enlisting into the U.S. Army Reserves under a program allowing legal immigrants with special skills to serve. And that was according to the Chicago Sun-Times. According to the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois, G worked at the direction of high-level intelligence officers in Jiangsu Province, Ministry of State Security, a provincial department of the Ministry of State Security for the People's Republic of China. But Biden went ahead and commuted his sentence, saying on November 22nd, Biden, with no fanfare or public announcement granted clemency to Xi and Zhu, the Chicago Sun-Times reported. Noting, by the way, that the move may have been part of a prisoner swap. Notably, Zhou didn't indicate in either document granting clemency why he chose to do so. Yeah. Well, it's not just Chinese spies, by the way. Biden also commuted the sentence of a notorious kids for cash judge. Now, this judge was convicted of imprisoning juveniles for $2.1 million in kickbacks. So the judge, was basically taking money for making sure that these kids would be imprisoned. Can't believe that. So he's a corrupt former Pennsylvania judge convicted of funneling juveniles to a for-profit detention facility in exchange for $2.1 million in kickbacks. He had his lengthy prison sentence commuted by President Biden. Former Luzerne County Judge Michael Conahan, the jurist at the center of the so-called Kids for Cash scandal, was among the 1,500 commutations. I love how they describe this guy. The 82-year-old lame duck president. Anyway. So the mother of a victim of the judge's disturbing crime fumed upon hearing of his commutation. Sandy Fonzo said, "I am shocked and I am hurt. Her son committed suicide after he was locked up as part of the scheme orchestrated by the judge and another former judge, Mark Ciavarella." And she said that in a statement. She added, according to the Citizen's Voice, Conahan's actions destroyed families, including mine, and my son's death is a tragic reminder of the consequences of his abuse of power. This pardon feels like an injustice for all of us who still suffer. Yep. And he's not done yet, folks. Biden's not done. He also commuted the sentence of a former Dixon comptroller, this in NBC5 Chicago, a former Dixon comptroller who embezzled more than $50 million. Rita Crundwell, a former Dixon comptroller who stole more than $50 million in what some publications called the largest municipal fraud in United States history, had her sentence commuted by President Joe Biden on Thursday. Crundwell was one of the nearly 1,500 individuals who had their sentences commuted by the president. Crundwell served as Dixon's comptroller for more than 20 years and pleaded guilty in 2013 to embezzling more than $50 million from the city over the course of that time. She used the funds to build a massive championship-winning horse breeding and show operation, according to prosecutors. Crundwell, who was originally sentenced to 19 years and 7 months in prison, was released from prison in 2021 under a federal program under the CARES Act that allowed for those at high risk of COVID to be released into home detention. So many of the individuals, by the way, that were released under that program were the focus of the commutations that Joe did. The Biden administration said in a press release that the individuals had been placed on home confinement during the COVID-19 pandemic and who have successfully reintegrated into their families and communities. there had been questions over whether those on home confinement under the CARES Act related program would be forced to return to the prison, but Biden's action ensures that the almost 1,500 individuals will have their sentences commuted instead. In addition to Crondwell's prison sentence, she was also required to pay restitution. The U.S. Marshals auctioned off her estate and assets as part of the sentence, netting $9.2 million. The city of Dixon also filed lawsuits against insurance companies and auditors that had not detected the thefts and were awarded more than $30 million in settlements as a result of that. So Biden pointed out, of the 1,500 people that the sentences that he had commuted, that many had successfully reintegrated into their families and communities, and had shown that they deserved a second chance. So just for those that don't know, a commutation reduces a sentence that is being served but does not erase the conviction nor imply innocence, according to the Department of Justice. Now, what's really sad about all of this, and Mark over on Facebook calls it out correctly, all the J6ers are still sitting and rotting. He commuted these sentences on these individuals who were convicted of their crimes and let out only because of the fact that somebody somewhere decided that COVID was so scary and dangerous that they had to leave the prison system, and were not called back, by the way, to the prison system. And they went ahead and he commuted their sentences because he didn't want to bother taking them back in. Anyway, so, and left the J6ers, who most of them are there. I mean, they're freaking trespassing grandmas. That's it. That's all they're being held for, for the most part. Now, granted, there are some people who were convicted on January 6th or for January 6th that actually did things like, destruction of property and so on and so forth. But for the most part, the vast majority are under what would be considered minor offenses, but got the book thrown at them because of the false belief that it was a quote-unquote insurrection. Yeah. So, anyway. What a mess. Well, speaking of being falsely accused, you'll remember, if you're, have the memory of much longer than just yesterday or 3 months ago. Okay. There was what essentially was kind of the kickoff, let's say, of the whole Me Too movement, of the whole kind of, white supremacy movement. The idea that there were young, especially in this particular case, young white males in this case, but young white privileged folks that essentially take advantage of their privilege, their white privilege, and turned out a huge nationwide movement to basically make it to where, believe all women, Me Too, the Jussie Smollett kind of thing, where all you have to do is have an accusation and it's an automatic guilty verdict, no matter what. Okay. Well, the woman, and what I'm speaking of, by the way, the case that I'm speaking of, or what I'm talking about, is the Duke Lacrosse rape case back in 2006. Okay. For those of you that may not remember, there was a woman who's a black woman who accused three or several, I should say, Duke lacrosse players that she told the story that she was raped by multiple team members, and that she essentially she identified, quote, three Duke University lacrosse players that had raped her at a team party back in 2006. But here's the problem. And thankfully, by the way, during the course of the investigation and everything, her story essentially started to fall apart very quickly. Like, for an example, of the three that she identified, one of the three wasn't even at the party that she allegedly claimed had raped her at the party. Also, they couldn't find any of the lacrosse player's DNA at all on her body when they did the, or her clothing when they started doing the investigation. So, you know, thankfully the entire thing started falling apart. All right. But now, after 18 years, the accuser has finally come out and admitted that she was lying to being raped. Now, keep in mind, you know, I'm upset about stuff like this, not because of the fact that the victims are basically, by the victim, I mean the rape victim is, you know, not being believed. I'm not upset about that. What I am upset about, though, is that these individuals are getting essentially off scot-free for falsely accusing people. And all it takes, honestly, in today's day and age is the simple accusation to ruin somebody's life. These particular three lacrosse players that were indicted for rape, they got expelled from Duke University. All three reportedly went off to other schools, but they are going to be carrying this kind of thing around for the rest of their lives. They will always be associated, regardless of whether they were found innocent or not. They will always be associated with stuff like this. This is why things like the Pete Hegseth, the Justice Kavanaugh, the false accusations that come out that the left and the mainstream media jump on immediately are so damaging, regardless of whether the truth finally comes out and the truth wins out in demonstrating that these things, are falsified or lies or defamatory. None of that assists these people's lives in the long run. Because no matter what happens, they will always carry the stigma of that accusation, falsified or not, throughout the course of the rest of their lives. Unless they are somehow able to reinvent themselves and hide themselves in some fashion in a far corner or far reach of this country, or even maybe even the planet, and be able to start anew, start fresh, they are going to be scarred for life because of these things. And so it's stuff like this. It's stuff like the BLM cases, the George Floyd, the Trayvon Martin, the God, I can't think of his name, but I think it's Mr. Brown. I can't remember his last name, or his first name. But it's the false accusations that come out that never ever go away. And this is part of the reason why many people who are so upset with the mainstream media, because the mainstream media has fallen upon the sword of we've got to get it right in favor of we've got to be first. And it's stuff like this that causes so much pain and heartache for the people who go through it. And there's no apologies. There's no fixing this. There's no fixing the idea that you were once accused of raping somebody. There's no fixing that. Anyone who runs across these young men in the future who has a memory back to this point will be able to, will essentially look at them with disdain and disgust in some cases if they don't understand or know the true facts of the case. And oftentimes that's what the mainstream media does, is they don't even bother like correcting the article in a purely public fashion. Because of course, if they do that, that immediately makes it to where now I am the one who made the mistake. I am the one who, screwed up. And nobody in the mainstream media is going to want that, because that goes directly to their integrity and their reputation. And they are not going to do that to their reputation. So more often than not, what ends up happening is the article will get a small footnote, a small editor's note, where it just basically says the corrected part of this argument is this. The coach of the team got shoved out because of this. Now, I'm not going to play the video, but this lady, Crystal Mangum, admitted on Thursday that she lied and made up a story. They trusted me that I wouldn't betray their trust, and I testified falsely against them by saying they raped me when they didn't, and that was wrong. She told the independent media outlet Let's Talk with Kat at the North Carolina Correctional Institution for Women, which, by the way, she is incarcerated for murder. Anyway, she continues on, I made up a story that wasn't true. She said she made up the allegations because she wanted validation from people and not from God. She was an exotic dancer who was in prison for second-degree murder of her boyfriend in 2013. Asked former players, and these are the people, David Evans, Colin Finnerty, and Reed Selgeman, for forgiveness. Those three gentlemen lost whatever scholarships they had. They lost the respect of the people that are surrounding them. This is just, she's asking for forgiveness. She's referred to the men as her brothers in a biblical sense. I want them to know that I love them. They didn't deserve that, and I hope they can forgive me. Now, she has never publicly stated that she fabricated the rape allegation before this. Now, she can no longer be prosecuted for lying under oath since the statute of limitations on perjury charges under North Carolina law is 2 years. This comes almost 2 decades after she accused them. And you sit here, and I'm just going to say this. You know, as for every one that comes forward, okay, for every one that comes forward that is a lie like this, it taints immediately 100 that come forward that are actually true. And I may be blowing that ratio out of proportion, but it's for an illustrative purpose. Every single time one of these people decides to get it in their head that they want to go and, I want to make a whole bunch of money, or in this case, she wanted validation from people rather than God. For whatever reason, the reasons don't really matter. What does matter, though, is that by doing this, you're not only ruining the lives of the people that you are falsely accusing, but you are also ruining the opportunities in cases such as this, where someone who actually is raped is no longer believed because of all the fake accusations that have come out. Okay? You're tainting the ability for those people who actually have suffered the horrendous act of rape at the hands of someone. You are automatically making it more difficult for them to come forward and actually be believed. So the impact of stuff like this is far, far reaching. It's like dropping a pebble in a pond and watching the ripples go all the way across the pond. It goes everywhere. Look at UC Smollett. Look at the Bubba Wallace accusation of racism because the garage doors had freaking pull downs that looked like nooses. It was totally fake, but yet the FBI had to get called in. It was this big, massive national news story. Oh my God. Oh, the racism in NASCAR is so... No, it was a freaking door pull. It was the way it's always been. Wasn't there for any particular reason. It was just the way that damn thing was designed. And yet, these people continually do this over and over and over again, and they continue to get away with it because there is no or very little consequence for those actions. I get frustrated every time you see something like this. I get frustrated every single time that you hear of people, good people, being accused irrationally and wrongly for something that they had nothing to do with. And yet these individuals, who most of the time are just lapping up the attention, they love it. They don't have the same reservations that a normal person would in bringing a false allegation. They don't care because they lap up the attention that is passed on to them. All right, folks, enough about that. Let me take a drink here for a second. That was a lot of words. All right, in these final minutes, let's move on to a couple of other things. So, everybody has been talking about tariffs, and especially, I guess, here recently, Donald Trump said that, that it's possible that prices may go up with some of his actions before they come down. And of course, the leftists clowned onto that and said, see, he lied. Yeah. But anyway, I do want to point out, though, that his threat of tariffs, on Mexico and on Canada, by the way, which, just so you're aware, the mere threat of the tariffs, he's not even in office yet. Even the mere threat of tariffs is already making an effect. Now, I already told you how Mexico has decided, because of the threat of tariffs, that they were going to go and stop the caravans from reaching the United States border. And that Canada's, not the prime minister, because he's a moron, but the secretary of whatever, or the minister of whatever, whatever they call the people who are the underlings that actually take care of these things, has already stated that they are willing to work well within their power to try and stem the flow of not only illegals, but also drugs coming across their borders to get into the United States. Well, now there is an economic impact that Mexico that Mexico is feeling here in the Daily Caller. Mexico already feeling the pinch of Trump's tariff threats. This is exactly what tariffs are doing. This is what they are designed to do. Here it is. So the Mexican government has been in conversation with Mazda Corporation, which is a major international auto manufacturer based in Japan, where Mazda has confirmed that it's reconsidering investments in Mexico until it receives clarification from the incoming Trump administration on the threats to slap the country with a 25% tariff on all goods, according to Bloomberg. Okay? Trump, who had pledged to embark on a hardline illegal immigration crackdown, has threatened to hit both Mexico and Canada with tariffs unless their governments do more to stop the flow of illegal immigration and illicit drugs into the U.S. Now, Mazda's Mexico director, Miguel Barbietto, said to Bloomberg, "We want to continue investing in the country," but said that without any guarantees, the truth is it would not be good for business for Mazda's Motor Corporation. He said, "What happens if the United States government imposes tariffs? Well, we do have a plan B. We are working to continue growing in the country, both in manufacturing and in the sale of new vehicles. We are confident that both governments, but above all, our government, the federal government in Mexico, that they will negotiate very well." You see what I'm saying here, folks? The tariffs, you look at the tariffs and everybody's like, oh, the tariffs are a tax and it's going to cause prices to go up. That's not the point. That's not the point of a tariff. The point of a tariff is to basically do kind of like a shot across the bow of the foreign country and the foreign businesses in order to let them know, hey, we want to change, or we would like you to change your policies. And what we are looking to do, if you don't, is we're going to recoup the costs through this tariff. And that's essentially what they're after. I seem to recall Mexico was acting all big and bad. Well, maybe not anymore. Maybe they're starting to realize that tariffs are not something that we think we would like. All right. Last article on the international scene. This doesn't bode well for the Middle East, I got to tell you, but in reality, this is exactly what I would be doing if I were in Israel. Here in Breitbart, Israel plans and is preparing plans for a strike on Iran's nuclear facilities after they went and destroyed 90% of the Syrian air defenses. So Israel's Army radio reported on Thursday that the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, has begun preparing plans for Israel to attack Iran's nuclear sites after destroying nearly 90% of Syria's air defense capabilities, which had formerly protected Iran. Army radio military correspondent Doron Kadosh reported on the air that Israel had destroyed 86% of Syria's surface-to-air missile capacity among 500 other sites that the IDF had targeted since the fall of the Assad regime on Sunday. Kadosh elaborated in a post on X that Israel had used 1,800 munitions in the attack on Syrian weapons, munitions that had been intended for other purposes, but were switched to the new mission once the fall of the regime began. He added that plans for striking the Syrian military had only been drawn up 2 days before the regime fell and were only improved at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning, just a few hours after Assad had fled the capital of Damascus. Now, he said, with a clear access to Iran, Israel's military and intelligence officials were preparing operational plans for an attack on the regime's nuclear facilities. The decision to launch a strike would be left to the elected political leaders. Well, things are getting hot again in the Middle East. And frankly, I don't blame them. I really don't. I mean, that's having a regime like that out their back door, ready to launch a nuclear strike. Yeah, that's not a good thing. All right, folks, that is it for me for this evening. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free, and once you are signed in, make sure you search up the American Perspective channel and hit that green follow button to get notified every time I go live. Also, too, don't forget to hit those thumbs up and like buttons across all my outlets, whether it's X, Facebook, YouTube, and, of course, the aforementioned Rumble. We will see you tomorrow night. Tomorrow night is Saturday, so we're an hour later. Tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on American Perspective. Have a great rest of your evening, and good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.